Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner. Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. Today, we're going to be doing a very special episode consisting of only quickfire questions. Every week, usually I ask my co-hosts some quickfire questions that they've never seen to try to catch them off guard, get their live reactions and answers. Today, there's nothing but those, so get ready. And that's for you guys, not for the audience. That's for you too. I'm your host, Logan Horn, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts and fellow prospect analysts, Matvei Zator and Devin Little. All right, so we're just going to jump into it. As I mentioned, all quick fire stuff. So I'm just going to be putting you guys on the hot seat all day, which is fun. I'll answer them too. For some of them, I'll maybe answer first just to give you a little bit of time to think about it. Such as this first one. I'll go first so that you guys have a second to think about it. I want you guys to give me your rankings, 1 to 10, of the last 10 first overall picks in the NHL draft. So, or how about, you know what? Give me your top 5. I don't know. It's hard. Do your best. There's a lot of names to remember. For me, I'm going to go the first. It's got to be McDavid, 2015 draft. That one's easy, even though he hasn't won a cup. This one is a little bit of a toss-up for me, but I'm going with Nathan MacKinnon next because he's won a cup, and he's incredible. And then Austin Matthews would be my third. And then it gets hard. Probably Jack Hughes, 2019 draft, just because he has broken out as an absolute superstar. And then, yeah, I'm just going to do 5. And then 5th, I'm going to go with Nico Hischier, just because I really like him and his two-way game has really evolved, and I think he's a genuine, excellent top 6 center. A little underrated for a while there, also a little underperforming for what you expect of a first overall pick. Some other guys that are in there, just so you guys have all the names bouncing around, like Rasmus Dahlin, Aaron Ekblad, Alexis Lafreniere, Owen Power, and Juraj Slafkovsky. So do your best. Good luck. Matt, I'm going to come to you first. Who, out of the last 10 first overall picks, what would your top 5 be?
Well, thanks for starting that up, because I was able to pull up all the first overall picks in the last
it's a good call.
bunch. So I'm going to go with, Connor McDavid's number 1 for me. I mean, he's got to be. I mean, there's just there's a lot of, but I'll go McDavid number 1. Number 2 is Austin Matthews. I mean, he's been amazing. Nathan MacKinnon number 3, and this is where going to get a bit hard. So I'm going to go Jack Hughes at 4th, as he's emerged as such a great player now. And then 5, I'll go Hischier. Hischier is number 5 for me, because he's emerged a bit more in the last few years, and kind of starting to make, like, I wasn't sure about him being a first overall pick at the time, because I believe Elias Pettersson was also drafted in that draft.
Yeah, 2017, there's Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen.
There are some other contenders in there, but
for sure.
I mean, if you're just going by first overall picks of where he was actually drafted overall. So I'm going to say 5. I'll round it out.
Yeah, not bad there for the New Jersey Devils to land Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. They're top 2 centermen for the next 15 years, 10 years at least. Like, that's some excellent work, and they're both on actually pretty affordable contracts right now for like long term. So that's they are set for a nice chunky contending window. Devin, can you give me your best top 5 of the last 10 first overall picks?
I really, really want to be spicy here, but like at some point you can't be too spicy.
Number 1, Owen Power.
Yes.
Number 1, Nail Yakupov.
Nail Yakupov.
Yeah, sneak him in there. Not bad.
I am gonna go with the other Oiler at number 1, Connor McDavid.
Sure.
And then I'm I feel like the real debate is that 2 spot between McKinnon and Matthews.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go Matthews at 2, just like the slightest little advantage over McKinnon. Obviously, putting McKinnon at 3rd. I think Matthews is like, if Ovechkin was already retired, I think we'd be talking about Matthews as the best goal scorer in the league. I think that counts for something.
Mhm.
And then at 4, I'm gonna actually put Rasmus Dahlin. Especially, if we were talking about this a year ago, probably wouldn't have cracked the top 5. But after what he's done this year, I think he's really emerged as the player that the Sabres hoped he would become. And then to round out the top 5, I'm going to put Jack Hughes for all the same reasons that both you and Matt said. He's a bona fide top line center, and he's only going to get better. So strong number 5 for Jack Hughes.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good call there. Dahlin, I think Dahlin and Jack Hughes have really driven home the point that you can't give up on someone with that much talent, that much potential too soon in the NHL. Like, I remember Jack Hughes' rookie year. It was not pretty.
Yeah.
It looked pretty rough, and people were getting a little nervous. And then his second year, people getting a little nervous, but he was looking a little better. But he has just exploded in the last, 12 months or so, for a good chunk of last year before getting injured. And then all this season, he's been incredible. And Rasmus Dahlin has emerged as a clear top pairing, probably top defenseman on his team, even though he doesn't necessarily have to be with some of the other talent there. So yeah, don't give up on guys like Lafreniere too soon. Capo Caco, even, he's the same age as Hughes basically, so he's got plenty of time. And these guys don't go top 2, top 3 overall by accident.
No.
Yeah.
They don't forget how to play hockey by accident afterwards. They're talented. They just need the right team around them, the right support. So that's fun. Thank you guys for playing along there. That one might be one of the toughest ones of the thing. So I just wanted to really scare you and then calm you down a little. Devin, I'm going to start with you for this one. And actually, I'm just going to be asking you this one. You'll see why. Who is a Red Wings prospect that you think is underappreciated? Someone that people don't talk about quite enough. Maybe this doesn't have to be the case, but maybe their stats aren't super exciting and people kind of underestimate how good they could be.
I feel like you could give like 2 different answers on 2 different like levels. Like, I think Carter Mazur isn't like appreciated enough outside of Red Wings fandom. I think if you talk to Red Wings fans, they're super excited about him. But like, if you talk to anybody else, they're like, "Who's Carter Mazur?" It's like, you should know who Carter Mazur is. So I think he's another answer. And then I would even like go down the line a little bit, and I would say like Red Savage. I think Red Savage is a good pick for that. He's not going to develop into a top line center. He's probably not even a top 6 center. But I think he's got a lot of heart, wears his heart in his sleeve, very competitive prospect. I think that, if you watch the World Juniors the last couple of years,
for sure,
you probably have developed an appreciation for his game. I think he's one of those prospects that if he pans out, he's going to be a fan favorite because, like I said, not going to put up a ton of points, but will do the little things and do the hard work that wins fans and teammates over.
Yeah, those are both good calls. I like Red Savage as a good, hardworking two-way guy, like you said, especially at the World Juniors. It's really clear to see that in his age group. You can see how hard he works. It's got it's a kind of a unique game. It's a lot of fun to watch too, though. So similar question. You'll kind of know where this is coming for, Matt. But who is a prospect of the Vancouver Canucks that you think is underappreciated? I know they don't have the most exciting prospect pool, but I'm sure there's someone in there that people probably should be a little more excited about than they are.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of late round guys lately that have kind of, I don't know if come out of nowhere, but they're guys that are just flying under the radar for a lot of people because, everyone's focused, of course, on Lekkerimäki and now Ratu. So, I mean, those guys are the high end, but I'm not going to say Aiden McDonough because a lot of Canucks fans know him now. He's just ripped up the NCAA, but so I'm going to go and say Connor Lockhart in the Ontario Hockey League. And he's used to play for the Erie Otters. Now he's playing for the Peterborough Petes. he's had a heck of a season. And, this is a guy that was drafted in, I believe, in the 6th round. So way down there.
Mhm.
And I don't think he should have been drafted that low. And he's been just amazing this year. Smaller guy, but he does have that skill level that it seems like he's starting to figure it out. And he had one season where he didn't play at all because of COVID. And then he comes in last season and had a heck of a season. And then he's just duplicated and gotten even better this season. So I'm not saying he's going to become anything in the NHL, but he sure is impressing me right now. And I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting about him, right now. And another guy, just an honorable mention, is Lucas Forsell in Sweden, who he's in the SHL right now. And he's, again, I think he's 6 goals, and that's pretty good in the SHL. Not playing a ton, but he's scoring, and he scored again today. And yeah, I think Forsell could potentially be another one of those Swedes that come over and like Linus Carlsson in the AHL, I want to see him in the NHL at some point. But I think Forsell could be another kind of under the radar guy that could just, late round pick, but becomes something in the NHL.
Yeah, those are great ones as well. I actually was going to mention Lucas Forsell because he's just 19 ever since getting called up to the SHL this year. He actually has 9 goals.
9 goals,
games.
even more.
Even 9 goals in 30 games, and he was a 7th round pick in 2021. So that's some solid value for now. At least it's looking promising there. Yeah, someone to remember. Someone to remember the name Forsell. Another Swede that might show up in Vancouver someday. Okay, so next question up here. And Matt, I'll start with you on this one. So, which team that is currently either in a playoff spot or in a race for the playoffs do you think is in the worst spot in the future when it comes to young talent and prospects? Someone like the Boston Bruins, Pittsburgh Penguins, Washington Capitals, roughly those kinds of teams. Tampa Bay, maybe you might think. Which team do you think is going to have a tough time maybe like 5-6 years down the road when their best players have moved on and they're trying to start over again?
Well, we mentioned them before we started recording. The Vegas Golden Knights. They just traded another one, Zach Dean, and he's probably their second best prospect next to Brisson. And I'm waiting for them to trade Brisson. And, they are still in the Timo Meier sweepstakes, apparently. And I don't know how, but if that happens, Brisson's in that trade. I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to say the Golden Knights. They're just in a tough position. I don't know. Like I say, their best prospect is Brisson. And, after the Stones, the Petrangelos, those guys move on. Who do they have really to kind of, I'm including defensemen in there, but I mean, their defense doesn't have, I'd say maybe, was it Cormier, I think is their best defensive prospect. And I'm surprised he hasn't been traded yet. So I'm they seem to win now and hope for that they figure something out in the future. So I'm going to say the Golden Knights. They're going to be in a tough position, and not that they're already in a tough position. So
yeah, that's a great one. They just keep they just kind of keep kicking that can down the road, and it's kind of looks like it's just going to keep compounding until when their players are done, they're going to have instead of having a really rough time in the first few years as an expansion team, they've kind of just sold their future to have a good start to their franchise, which, not the worst decision. They almost won the cup in their first year. So I'd take it if I was them. Devin, who do you think, which team that's in a playoff spot or in the playoff race do you think has the most abysmal looking future a little ways down the road? They don't have the young players, the prospects, the picks.
There are plenty of good options for this one. And I'm going to do like a scattershot approach to this because I can't just single out one. I think you mentioned it, the Bruins. This team is very much tied to basically Bergeron's window right now. As soon as he retires, they're pretty much screwed. Like their best
they got 4 months.
I mean, literally though, like they've got obviously they've got a once in a lifetime team this year, but again, the Bergeron decides he can't do it again, who do you replace him with? If they're thinking about moving Fabian Lysell in a move at the deadline, I'd be very nervous about that because he's as good as it gets when it comes to their prospect pool. And then another team, I believe you also mentioned them, Pittsburgh Penguins. Same idea, very much tied to the Sidney Crosby window. I think Crosby has a few more years on him, and I have a bit more faith in the Penguins being able to rebound. They have some decent prospects and some of their better players like Gensel and Jari, and I even said Crosby still has a few years left in him still. Like they could turn it around. They just got to get with it. And then one other team I want to throw out is actually the New York Islanders. I think lesser so. Barzell's 26, I believe. Bo Horvat's 27, 28. So and then you throw in Noah Dobson, Ilya Sorokin. So they're not like hurting right now, but they don't have picks. Their prospect pool isn't exactly overflowing. So basically they're set up to be a team that is like in the top tier of the Metropolitan Division, and they're just not. And as long as they continue to kind of, tread water and make moves like a top 15 pick for Romanov, I feel like they're going to be kind of perpetually treading water and not able to add difference makers in the draft. And, but also while also not being quite good enough to go on a cup run. So I hate that purgatory where you're not good enough to go on a deep run, but you're also not fat enough to, get high picks. And it's even worse when you trade away the high picks that you do have. So I'd be worried about the Islanders in like 5 years.
Yeah, that's a fair one. I think it's actually really funny that Bo Horvat trade, because the New York Islanders remind me a lot of the Vancouver Canucks, just roster construction wise. Too over-reliant on a great young goaltender, Ilya Sorokin, Thatcher Demko. One excellent young defenseman, Noah Dobson, Quinn Hughes, a young top-line centerman, Matt Barzal, Elias Pettersson, and then they just swapped Bo Horvat. But yeah, just like short-sighted move after short-sighted move. Like the Canucks traded away the pickies to take Dylan Guenther, just to save cap hit 1 year, and now they've got contracts that they wish they could get rid of because of that. And that kind of feels like some of the stuff the Islanders are doing too. So they're kind of in a similar place. Looks like maybe the new management group in Vancouver is at least going to be patient enough to fix some of those. But I don't get that sense that Lou Lamoriello is about to change his ways in his late 70s, or however old he is now. I don't think he's going to change his management style. So that's a good one, Devin. I think I'd be worried about them coming down just in a few years here. All right, so kind of on the opposite end, and Devin, I'll start with you for this one. Which rebuilding team that's loaded with tons of young players and prospects, which of those teams do you think will win the Stanley Cup first? Thinking teams like Arizona Coyotes, Chicago Blackhawks, maybe Detroit Red Wings, Anaheim, Columbus, any of those kind of teams.
I feel like I'm contractually obligated to say the Detroit Red Wings.
Hey.
I mean, and I do think they got a bright future ahead of them. But I'll not go the easy route on this one. I kind of want to throw in Seattle because they're still very much building, even though they've got like a playoff caliber team this year. We're talking about this team and they don't have Shane Wright yet, and they don't have a lot of their other prospects they've had, and Jaeger Furkus and others. I think they've got a really bright future ahead of them, and they're already pretty darn good this season. And then one other team I do want to throw out because I feel like if I think the Red Wings could be this team, then I think this other team could definitely be, because I feel like they're like right at the same point as they are, and that would be the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, the Sabres are pure offense at this point, and they have Rasmus Dahlin, as we've already talked about him. I feel like they're basically like a good, young, solid, capable goaltender away from surprising a lot of teams. So I think I have to lean on the Sabres on this one, begrudgingly, because they're in that Atlantic division. But don't write off the Red Wings or the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, totally. Matt, what do you think? Which of these teams loaded with young players and prospects, picks, whatever, do you think will win the Stanley Cup first?
This is a tough one. There's quite a few that have so much young talent, and I want to say that I want to say the Columbus Blue Jackets because
it's a good one.
They're going to be one of those guys that are going to have, and one of those teams that are going to potentially, they're in the running, going to be definitely in the running for Connor Bedard. So if they get him, that just really makes them the first one, I think, because they already got Kent Johnson. Just list them. You just look at their prospect. They got so many.
Matejchuk.
Matejchuk. And then they're relatively young guys in like Lane and even like
Gaudreau will be there.
Gaudreau is not old. He still has a lot of years left. I'd say the Columbus Blue Jackets because, like I said, they're going to add. Plus, they're going to be adding a Bedard maybe, or a Fantilli, or Leo Carlsson. All these guys are going to be high end top line guys for them. So I'm going to say, and then whoever else. They're going to trade Gavrikov probably for a first round pick when they finally do trade him. So that's going to be another first rounder in there, and whoever else they trade at the deadline if they do anything. So I'm going to say the Blue Jackets because of all those reasons, because I think they just have so much. And if they are able to, like, Kalkalainen has proven he's a good, he's not going to trade away these young guys for nothing. So if he does, he's going to trade him for someone that's going to be impactful. So I'm going to say that Blue Jackets for now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Can I just say real quick that of all the teams that are in the Bedard sweepstakes, I feel like the Blue Jackets and their fans really, really deserve a Connor Bedard because
it'd be awesome.
They got Rick Nash 20 years ago, and obviously a franchise icon for them, but that didn't pan out the way you would have hoped. And that's a marketplace that deserves a really, really good team. They've waited long enough, and if they were to get a Connor Bedard, they would become a must-watch hockey team, and they deserve that.
Yeah, I feel like that fan base gets a lot of crap, but you look at the attendance numbers for this season, where they have been very consistently a bottom 3 team, often last place in the NHL, and they're selling out games.
Yeah,
fans there love their hockey and they love this team. They're very excited for the future. So I think it'd be lovely for those fans to get a top 2 pick, maybe even.
Yeah,
that would just be excellent. That'd be really great. I think that'd be a ton of fun for a long time, because that team is going to be good. They thought that might happen this year, but that was a no-go.
Injuries.
Yeah,
that's just
totally.
They've been
horrible.
like decimated. But
then also though, to be fair, they did pay, I think, $4 million a year for 4 years for Eric Goodbranson.
That was a bad one.
That's not a winning move. That's not a winning move in free agency.
Luckily, they did the Gaudreau trade right after, so it's like Gaudreau signing. Gaudreau signing.
Yeah.
That makes up for it, sure, for a lot cheaper than everyone expected. I don't know if this counts because I wouldn't consider them in like the classical sense rebuilding, but the team I'm going to go for is the Minnesota Wild, because they're just like led by their young players for the most part, and their success is only going to be because of the guys that are 23 and under right now, because they have no cap space, and they can't make a good team in the next 3 years. They can't make a Stanley Cup team in the next 3 years. If they do, it would be the greatest feat of roster building in NHL history, with that 13-14 million of dead cap space from those buyouts. So it's going to be down the line. And also Jesper Wallstedt seems like that guy, that can drag a team there, even if they're not incredible, but they look like they will be. He feels like that kind of goalie, and that doesn't hurt when you're trying to make a cup run. Actually, on that note, I'm curious what you guys think is the most important single spot in the depth chart when you're a rebuilding team. Is that a top line center, number 1 defenseman, or a starting goalie? Notice I didn't say elite goalie, so it's not like you're adding Andrei Vasilevsky, who got an insane shutout last night, or I guess Saturday night, we could say. Which position do you think is most important? Keep in mind, though, Colorado Avalanche just won the cup last year with Darcy Kemper, who they traded for, just like on a whim.
Yeah.
Not someone that they drafted. Can work out, doesn't always. Matt, what do you think? Which position in the depth chart do you think is most important for a rebuilding team?
Center. You need centerman. I mean, you need two. I'd say at least two. Not superstar, but elite. So you need two elite centermen to win a cup and to rebuild or whatever, to make a Stanley Cup contending team. And you're looking at, like, I mean, the Avalanche, arguably they had only one. Well, Nazem Kadri would probably considered an elite or semi-elite.
At least last season.
Centerman. At least last season, he had 80 plus points. So, I mean, they had it. You go down a line of Stanley Cup winners and, you know, Tampa Bay Lightning, you got Stamkos, you got Braden Point, two elite centermen, and then a really good third line guy. So, I mean, you need at least two. I'd say ideally three. So load up on centermen if you're rebuilding, because you're going to need them.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's totally fair argument. Devin, what do you think? I saw a little face scrunch when he said centerman. So what do you think the most important spot in the lineup is for a rebuilding team?
I face scrunch because I almost think it's kind of a moving target because I don't know. I definitely don't think it's goalie. You made a really good point, Logan. You can go get a goalie that's good enough. Darcy Kemper won them a Stanley Cup with a .903 save percentage or something like that. Like, not even elite numbers at all. Like, their team was just that damn good. I am gonna actually. I'm gonna say defenseman, and I'm not saying that because I don't think centermen are important. They obviously are. But I am gonna kind of go down the list here for a second to elaborate my point. The Colorado Avalanche had Cale Makar. The Tampa Bay Lightning had Victor Hedman. The St. Louis Blues had Alex Pietrangelo. The Washington Capitals, John Carlsson. Pittsburgh Penguins, Chris Letang. You can, keep going back, and they all had like a bona fide number one defenseman that you couldn't even debate was a number one defenseman. Now all of those teams had top tier centers, whether it's Stamkos, Braden Point, Nathan McKinnon, Nazem Kadri, Nicholas Backstrom, Sidney Crosby. But let's look at the St. Louis Blues. When they won with Ryan O'Reilly and Braden Shen as their top centers. Now, Ryan O'Reilly at that time specifically was definitely a top line center. I wouldn't say he was, an elite top line center like Nathan McKinnon or Sidney Crosby or any of the other guys mentioned. He'd hold his own. And Braden Shen, I think he's one of the best second line centers in the NHL. So my point there is that all of those teams had a true bona fide number one defenseman. And without them, I don't think they win. But not every single one of those teams had a true bona fide, great top line center. So I think that you can build a team that's deep enough to win without that elite top line center, but you can't do that without a pure bona fide top line defenseman. So I'm going to go with defenseman, with the asterisk that I do think that top line centers are very important. Don't get me wrong on that one.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think any of the sides of this are defendable. But I'd probably agree with you there, Devin, on defensemen, just because their role is just by nature of how the lineup works in the NHL is more valuable just because they play more minutes. Your top defenseman is going to play in the playoffs like 25 to 30 minutes a night, probably. And like that list of defensemen you went through, like if you go back further, it's like prime Duncan Keith, Drew Doughty, Zdeno Chara. Like, not only are these like elite defensemen, these are top 5, top 3 Norris candidates in the seasons that they
top of their generation, basically.
Then throw in though, there's always exceptions to this too.
For sure.
Looking at I'm trying to think, there's like 3 years in a row where it was a team effort type defense. So like Carolina Hurricanes is one big example of that. They never had Glenn Wesley was their best one.
Elite.
Yeah.
He wasn't elite. So I mean
that Hurricanes team was very much just a full team effort, because I don't think they even had like a true top line center either.
Yeah.
Like, was Rod Brindamore their top center that year? Like, and he's a great center, but like
So I mean, there's
Yeah.
always exceptions, but
That's
for the
very
most
true,
part,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, defense. There's at least one big one. Like look at New Jersey Devils way back when, like Scott Stevens, Scott Niedermeyer. They're
There was, I think it was 2015 when the Blackhawks won it against the Lightning. They had like, I'm pretty sure their defense was Duncan Keith and a bunch of guys because everybody was injured. And that just kind of highlights the point that they had Duncan Keith and that was enough. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it can be anyone though. Like we saw last year, McDavid is capable of carrying a team pretty far.
Absolutely.
But that's Connor McDavid. That's not just a run-of-the-mill elite centerman. That is generational, one of the greatest of all time type centerman. But yeah, I mean, anyone in those spots could be the difference maker that wins a cup. But
yeah,
curious where you guys land on that. Thanks for the new points there, the arguments there. We're gonna take a quick break for an ad break, and then afterwards we're gonna be a little more focused on the upcoming draft. Just to give you guys a second to just reframe your brains. All right, so today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Hockeypedia. Have you ever been looking for details on a player that just competed in the World Juniors? Do you want to know who owns the New York Islanders? Do you want to see how many prospects selected in the first round by the Vegas Golden Knights that are still a part of the team? It's very few. Do you want to know what the NHL awards are in their history? If you're interested in any of these or a huge variety of other hockey-related questions, make sure you check out and bookmark the Hockey Writers Hockeypedia. It's an ever-growing collection of hockey resources that is invaluable to any fan looking for information. Check for a link in the show description below and dive in today. All right. So as I mentioned, back half of the show here, we're going to go over some more draft related stuff. This is a prospect show, as we all know. First off, though, it is going to be a slight look back at the 2022 draft, and then we'll look ahead. I'm curious, which prospect from the 2022 draft do you think has done the most to improve their stock since draft day? So I'm thinking guys like Ryan Green, who went in the second round and is almost a point per game in the NCAA this year. No one expected that out of him. Marco Kasper, people were surprised to see him in the top 10, and now he's a top 6 center in Sweden, producing well. Jimmy Snuggerud is a safe bet there, late first, and now he's producing top 5 in the NCAA. Or someone like Lane Hudson, maybe, Owen Beck. There's plenty of options. It's only been, 8 or 9 months, but there's always movement. So, Devin, I'll start with you. Who's a prospect from the 2022 NHL draft do you think has risen a lot?
I like Lane Hudson as a pick here. And I think that it's kind of tricky to say that because I think he's not doing anything like he was doing this stuff last year too.
Sure.
And he just got overlooked because he's small. And I think he will continue to get overlooked because he's small. But I think that, as he continues to do this year after year, at some point you can't keep overlooking him. So I think Hudson has done himself a service by, continuing to do what he did last year. And then the other one, I have to throw this one out there. It's got to be Dmitry Bichelnikov. And I think, it's not because he's a Red Wings prospect. It's because, I've said this before on Grindline. I've said this before in this show. It wasn't on my radar going into that draft. Not at all. Maybe that's a fault on my end, but he just wasn't on my radar. And then the Red Wings got him in the second round. And, watching him play in Russia now, I get it. I understand why they took him when they took him. I think that you can justify that pick a lot more today than you might have been able to, like you said, 8-9 months ago. So I'm sticking with second rounders in this pick, in this topic.
I mean, that is actually a good range, though, because it feels like a lot of prospects that end up there are really talented, but just a little less of a sure thing in the eyes of NHL GMs. They have maybe the talent of a first rounder, but general managers aren't as confident that they'll get to that ceiling. So it's kind of the range some of those guys end up going. Matt, what do you think? Who's a prospect that you think has done the most to improve their draft stock since the 2022 draft?
Well, I was going to say Lane Hudson because
I knew you were.
He's my favorite. Like I said, he shouldn't have been drafted in the second round. He should have been drafted in the first. but his size was always going to be a problem. And like Devin said, it's going to be an issue all his whole career, unfortunately, unless he, does grow like they say he could grow a little bit. So I mean but he's just such an amazing talent, and the Montreal Canadiens getting where they did, he's going to end up being a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. And a power play guy. I mean, even if he becomes just a power play specialist, I mean, that's pretty great for a guy that was drafted so, not low. I mean, second round is still relatively good, but
yeah,
I mean, Hudson's I think he's just way more. He'd be like, for me, he'd be drafted in the late first, ahead of Lamoureux for sure. I know Lamoureux's big, and he's, we talked about this in the 2020 about him being, he doesn't do a lot. he's a big guy.
Big boy.
So, I mean, that was why he was drafted there, because of his size, and why Hudson was drafted so low, because of his size. So I'm going to say definitely Hudson. And just a shout out to a Canucks draft pick, Damon Gardner, who was drafted in the 4th round. He's having a heck of a season in the USHL right now with the Tri-City Storm. Point a game player, 27 points in 27 games. This is a guy that only played 7 games in the USHL last season and had to deal with an injury this season to start. And now he's just ripping it up. So just a quick honorable mention to Gardner in the 4th round there.
Nice. That's a good one. I mentioned him when I was asking it, but my pick would be Ryan Green. Another guy, 2nd rounder, late 2nd by the Blackhawks. I just really liked his 2-way game in the USHL last year. Really impressed by his skating and his defense as a centerman. And boy, has he looked incredible in the NCAA this year. I just checked, and he has, as of recording, 27 points in 30 games as a freshman, which is a lot. Quite impressive. Lots of production, really good value for a 2nd rounder there. The 2022 draft might be like a major game changer for the Blackhawks down the line with some of those other guys they added. Korchinski and Nazar, I believe they added in the 1st round. That'll be the difference maker. So now, as I mentioned, we're going to go to the 2023 draft. A few questions about some of the prospects there. So Matt, I'm going to come to you first here. What would you say to someone who thinks that Adam Fantilli should go 1st overall because he's playing against tougher competition in the NCAA? Fair point there. And he has a serious advantage when it comes to physical tools. He's 4 or 5 inches taller, a lot stronger. What would you say to that person?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say Bedard. Like, the thing is, I would just say Bedard's going to end up being the better player. He's a generational talent. I mean, he really has no weaknesses. I mean, he does have size. I mean, his size is a little bit under, but whatever. I mean, he's just got such a great, like, you just list off his attributes. He's got an NHL caliber shot already. He's got NHL caliber vision. He can be creative. He can use his size, even though he doesn't have a lot of size. He's not afraid to go into the corners and fight for the puck. I mean, you pick something. I don't really know if you can pinpoint a weakness. Now, Fantilli doesn't have a lot of weaknesses either, but for me, I would just say Bedard is just going to end up being, you're going to look at both these guys 5 years down the road. You're going to say Bedard is like, he's already had, this is not out of the question, but have a few 100-point seasons already. So, I mean, Fantilli could too. So, I mean, it's big, but I would go Bedard over him just because of the fact that Bedard really doesn't have anything that you can say will limit him in the NHL, at least in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, that's totally fair. Devin, what are your thoughts? What would you say to someone that thinks Adam Fantilli should go 1st overall above Connor Bedard?
First, I would tell them, all right, make that pick, and then we'll reconvene in 5 years. Second, I would also say that Connor Bedard has a certain it factor that very few players have. And I'm not saying that Fantilli doesn't have an it factor. I just think Bedard has a different it factor. It's like, it really, like, it's such a silly comparison, but it really is. It's like comparing Connor McDavid to Jack Eichel back in 2015. Both elite centers, and you could tell, from the get-go that they both were going to be, top line centers and, very talented, very capable players at the NHL level. But McDavid just had more there. He just, he impacted the game more. He just stood out more. He made things happen more. And he, there's a reason why it was tanking for McDavid and not Eichel. And the last little point I want to make too is, we can look back just a couple months ago to the World Juniors, where they're on the exact same team, right? Both playing for Team Canada. And, who stood out more? Was it Bedard or Fantilli? Bedard put up a ridiculous 23 points in 7 games in the World Juniors, and Fantilli put up 5 points in 7 games. Different roles, different expectations, different, I'm not saying it's a one for one comparison, but if you're asking me to pick between a player who put up 23 points in 7 games or a player who put up 5 points in 7 games, I don't really have to think too hard about that one. So I would say when you put them on the same team and you put them in generally an equal opportunity to produce, Bedard blew everybody out of the water and Fantilli looked good, but he didn't blow everybody out of the water. So, and I think that kind of is a microcosm of what Bedard can do versus what Fantilli can do.
Yeah, for sure. I left that question open enough that one of you could just be like, oh, actually, I agree with that person. Fantilli should be first overall. Didn't expect it, but I left it open. So it wasn't too judgy if you ended up with that. Yeah, great answers. You guys kind of went through all my ideas there as well, except for just you look at the quality of the teams each of these players are on. And Connor Bedard is not on a very good team. Without him, that team is at the very bottom of the WHL. Even with him, they're barely in the playoff race, really, in the WHL. But then you look at the University of Michigan Wolverines, and that team is just bursting at the seams with talent. Tons and tons of NHL prospects that are going to be difference makers in the NHL someday soon. That's not to take away from what he's done, because he's been incredible and he's the best player on that team and probably the best player in all of college hockey. But that context is important. And then also I feel like one knock on Fantilli is that he kind of gets caught playing what we like to call a hero puck or hero hockey, where when he gets the puck, sometimes he just looks at the net and he's like, this play ends with me scoring and nothing else. And then that doesn't always work out. He's really, really talented. Sometimes it works out and it's incredible, but it doesn't always work out. And while Bedard does have those moments, look at that overtime goal at the World Juniors against Slovakia. He also, this year in the WHL, has become one of the best playmakers, if not the best playmaker in that league. He uses his teammates very well, very intelligent. At the World Juniors as well, as soon as defensemen got wise to his shot on the power play, he started just faking and passing it off to someone else, trusting his teammates and setting up a better chance. So yeah, it feels pretty open shut right now for Bedard. Who knows? There's still time, but I wouldn't be betting on anyone else. Okay, so we know that Fantilli is going to be the top NCAA player in the draft. He's going to be going second overall, probably, maybe third, maybe first. Who knows? But I'm wondering what you guys think. Who do you think is going to be the next NCAA player off the board? The next 3 that like have a real shot, I would say, are Matthew Wood, Gavin Brindley, and Charlie Stramel. Obviously there's some big differences there in terms of height. It's like Matthew Wood, Charlie Stramel, Matthew Wood, Gavin Brindley, and Charlie Stramel. There's a good 5-6 inches between them and the short one there. But that's not everything. Brindley has been producing a ton of offense as well at Michigan. Matt, what do you think? Which other NCAA player do you think has the best shot at being the second college player off the board?
You'd probably guess someone to pick. Matthew Wood. I've been saying, I think I mentioned him already last season about him. He's an amazing guy. He's an amazing prospect as well. And I think he's going to be one of those. I believe he could be a top 15 pick. but again, there's just so much talent in this draft. He could drop into the 20s. I mean, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, his size, his hands, his skill, and read more about him. I'll have a prospect profile on him later on. But just a shameless plug.
Go for it.
He'll and Fantilli too. I'll be writing his as well. But yeah, I'd say Matthew Wood is probably the next one off, but like Brindley and Stramel are two definite candidates as well. But I'm gonna say Wood.
Yeah. Wouldn't expect anything else from Team Matt over there. Devin, who's your pick? Who do you think is the next best, or not next best? Who do you think will be drafted next out of the NCAA group this year?
Yeah, count me on Team Matt as well. I do think it'll be Wood. I do agree with your thought there, Matt, that he could very well be a top 15 pick. And I think that his size definitely plays a role. We all know NHL GMs maybe disproportionately value size and disvalue size, depending if you don't have it. And I also so kind of this is a weird comparison, and I already know it's a weird comparison. So, light me up if you want to. I'll light myself up too. I kind of think of like Cutter Gauthier last year, where he wasn't he wasn't considered a top 10 guy like for most of it, and then kind of out of nowhere he started to soar and ended up being a top 5, right? He was top,
he was
like
fifth.
he was Flyers, okay, yep, fifth overall. And part of it was his size, part of it was his versatility and being able to play center all of a sudden. And I think that there's some similarities there just in terms of size and play style and whatnot. I think I like Wood as a goal scorer more than I like Gauthier as a goal scorer, but we're not talking about him. I just think that he's the type of player that as we get further into this scouting season and as the draft approaches, GMs will talk themselves into liking more and more because of his combination of size, skill, physicality, and all that good stuff. And playing for a quality hockey program too at the University of Connecticut too. It's kind of an underrated program over there in terms of their ability to produce quality NHL prospects. So I think that Wood's got quite a few things going for him, and I think he'll be the next one off the board.
Yeah, some great points there. I think you guys are probably right. Matthew Wood, I mean, he has 30 points in 32 games for the University of Connecticut as a freshman. I believe he's the youngest player in NCAA men's hockey as well, which is very impressive. And that production, coupled with his size, hands, his shot, probably makes him top 20 pick. Maybe higher, like you said, Devin. NHL GMs and scouts like guys that are tall, but he kind of deserves it too. I do think Stramel will be a little higher than people expect. I think ever since he got back from the World Juniors, he's been producing better. He had barely any points beforehand in the NCAA. And he was kind of impressive there for me, just as a big, fast, strong centerman who plays a pro game in my eyes, skates a lot better than Matthew Wood at a similar size, but doesn't have the offensive touch, which is probably why Wood will go a little earlier. Okay, so I'll do this one more question here, and then we're going to get to our prospects of the week to end off our show. So which prospect do you think is having a more impressive draft season? We've got Matvei Michkov, who after an incredible performance on Sunday morning is up to 20 points in 27 KHL games for the last place team in the KHL. Season is over, last place officially, and he had 20 points in 27 games. Or Leo Carlsson, who has earned a pretty big role on a good SHL team, top 5, and has scored 22 points in 40 games. Different leagues, very different expectations and roles on their team. When you're a top prospect going to a bottom feeder in that kind of league, you can do anything you want and you can score tons of points like Michkov has. And the SHL is a little more disciplined, and Carlson's had a tough go there. Not a tough go, he's been really impressive, but he's had to work hard for it. Devin, I see you struggling, and so I just want your best shot. Who's having the more impressive draft season, Matvei Michkov or Leo Carlsson?
I'm inclined to say Carlsson because I'm always impressed when draft year prospects excel at the SHL because like you said, there's a very high level of responsibility expected of every player in that league. So when you have 17 and 18-year-olds excelling in that league, it's a big deal. And there's a reason why Carlsson is a likely top 5 pick in this draft, possibly even a top 3. I am gonna say Michkov though. And I think it's because, like you said, he's playing for last place team and he's still playing like Matvei Michkov. It can be tough when you're playing for a really bad team. You could also make the argument that like it's really easy to shine on a bad team if you're good and your team isn't good. So I can hear that argument. But I think that and this kind of goes to like an overall draft picture here too. I think that Michkov, deservedly or not, is kind of getting somewhat overlooked in recent months for things that are outside of his control. And I think that despite that, he continues to be the prospect that everybody was raving about a year ago. I think that his talent is really hard to overlook. I don't care, what you think of geopolitics. I don't care what you think of his NHL timeline. I think that when you watch him, you can't deny that this kid is talented, and this kid, if and when he does come to the NHL, he's going to make a difference for his team. And I think that for him to, excel the way he's excelled and continue to look like the Matvei Michkov that we've been talking about for 2 years at this point, I think that says a lot. And I think that he's done nothing but reaffirm to me that he is very much a top prospect in this class. And kind of reiterate a point that I'm sure many have made at this point. The further he falls in this draft, the more silly a lot of GMs are going to look because, like I said, I think he's going to be a difference maker at the NHL level. So, and that's not to say Carlsson won't be, but I think Michkov is a certain kind of special. And I think that this season over in Russia has only affirmed that more.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some great points. Before I say anything, I'm gonna throw it over to you, Matt. Which prospect do you think is having a more impressive draft season, Matvei Michkov in the KHL or Leo Carlsson in Sweden?
Well, I mean, it's tough because Michkov, yes, he's playing on a bad team, blah blah blah, but he's just, and it's unfortunate, like Devin said, it's all these other circumstances with him and his contract, his where he's playing, or what his nationality is, all that stuff. But if everything was ideal, he'd be in the running for first overall. I really believe that he'd be like right there with Connor Bedard. You'd be like, I don't know who to pick. I mean, you'd be tossing between the two because Michkov could end up being a lethal goal scorer in the NHL. I mean, I don't want to say Ovechkin because Ovechkin's just an otherworldly Wayne Gretzky type, because he will beat Wayne Gretzky's goal total at one point. And no one's going to touch that just as long as it took Ovechkin to go to Gretzky. Yeah. So I'm not going to compare him to that, but he's going to be a 50 goal scorer in the NHL. I really believe that's what's going to be. But because of all the other stuff, it's unfortunate. So I'm going to go with Michkov as being more impressive because the KHL is not an easy league. I mean, it's a men's league. It's a professional league. As much as everyone says, it's not the NHL, but it does have former NHLers in it. It's got players that, I believe Datsuk is still playing in the KHL somewhere. It's not like they're playing against these, AHL guys or, juniors, and he's 18 and he's dominating. So, I mean, yes, it's for, like I say, it's a bad team, but I'd say Michkov is having the more impressive, even though like Carlsson, again, the SHL is not an easy league either, because they also all are playing against men. So, I mean, both impressive, but I'm going to go with Michkov because of the fact that there's a lot of other things going around him that he has to deal with as well.
For sure. Yeah, it's a tough call. Like you guys mentioned, like Leo Carlsson is in a tough league where he has to be a responsible two-way guy. He's got to make smart plays. There's not a lot of ice time or a lot of space for young players that can't hold their own in that way, physically, defensively. So that is like, and the fact that he's scored 22 points already, that bodes really well for his well-roundedness going to the NHL. And Michkov, just goes all in on offense and is a bit of a non-factor the other direction. Would these two players succeed if they swap positions? I have no clue.
That's a good question.
I think I'd also have to go with Michkov just because the offense is what we needed to see from him, and he's really he's taken it. Like ever since he joined Sochi in the KHL, the last place team on a loan from the first place team, I believe. From that moment on, he led the team in scoring for the rest of their season. The last half of their season, he was 5th overall on the team in scoring, and he missed over half their games because he wasn't on the team. Like that's very impressive for an 18-year-old player to do. And okay, doesn't have that much of a defensive game, probably a liability on that end for now, at least. So are other elite wingers in the last decade or so. Patrick Kane, Nikita Kucherov at times too. Like you don't have to be a well-rounded two-way winger to be like elite. And it really feels like he has the potential to be on that level of just top 5 winger in the NHL. And Leo Carlsson is going to be an excellent player, but I think the more impressive year has to go to Michkov. Doesn't hurt that he hit a lacrosse goal today in that last game of the season. That doesn't hurt. That highlight will be replayed until he hits the NHL in 3 years, I guess, or until he does it again in the KHL. All right. Thank you guys for playing along. That was a lot, and I might not have any more quick fire questions ever again because I used them. That's not true. I'm sure I can come up with more, but we're going to close the show out the way we normally do. We're just going to run over our prospects of the week. I'll kick us off here. Just going to keep it going. Matvei Michkov is my pick. He had 5 points in his season finale. That lacrosse goal, some really great passes, just looks like the dominant offensive player that everyone thought he would be last year, 2 years ago. And it's really starting to translate to the KHL. Next season, he'll probably get a chance with the SKA St. Petersburg, I believe is the team that owns his rights and loaned him to Sochi. And he's got a real shot to be a top 6 winger. And that would be incredible for his development and for whichever team drafts him. That is my pick. Matt, I'll come to you. Who's your prospect of the week?
I mentioned him earlier, Lucas Forsell. I want to go a little bit more into him because he's just a guy that was drafted, like I say, drafted way down in the 2022 draft. I'm actually really impressed by the Canucks just overall with the picks that they got in the 2022 draft. Even though Lekkerimäki hasn't lit it up or whatever, but he's still a solid prospect. And then a lot of great, later round picks that they really, I believe, hit on. Forsell is, I'm pretty sure he was drafted last year, or was it the year before? Whatever. It's 2021. But even in the 2021 draft, they had a few. So I'll correct myself. But Forsell, he's had, like I say, 9 goals in the SHL, which again, we said, not an easy league to score in. And he's not, he's not a high-end guy like Leo Carlsson, right? He's got a lot of skill though. He's got an NHL shot from what I can see from the, the highlights and stuff that go on, because it's too late or too early in the morning to watch the games. But whenever they're on. So I need, highlights of Forsell I've seen. His shot is really good. He doesn't have the biggest size, but he seems to have the ability to play against men. For a late round pick, I think the Canucks got real good value for where they got him. Probably because in this draft year, he was the youngest or one of the youngest. He just missed the cutoff to be drafted in the 2022 draft. So maybe that's why I'm getting mixed. but he almost wasn't able to be drafted in that one. So, I mean, doing what he is doing at his age is pretty good in the SHL.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great pick as well. And Devin, we'll come to you last here. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
I'm gonna go a little unconventional. We've had some moves happen recently, right? So I want to talk about one of the prospects that was moved in one of those moves. And it's one that happened, I believe, yesterday. It was the trade between Boston and Colorado, which sent Keith Kincaid to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for Shane Bowers. And Shane Bowers is who I'm going to highlight today. The story of Shane Bowers is one of increased expectations. We'll put it that way, because he was part of that big old Matt Duchene. There's a Shane Bowers and Matt Duchene. It threw me off there. That big old Matt Duchene trade was in Colorado's system the entire time after that trade. Was never able to crack their lineup. Appeared in his first NHL game this season, played a little over a minute, and then got hurt. And then once he got healthy again, there wasn't a spot for him in Colorado, so they sent him back to the AHL. That's his unfortunate only opportunity he's had in the NHL. He's 23 years old, a 2017 first round pick of the Ottawa Senators, and now he's in the Boston Bruins system. I think that this is going to be good for him, not only because, change of scenery, change of opportunity, but also we've talked about how the Bruins don't have a lot of young talent in their pipeline. And while you can probably say that Bowers at this point isn't going to be like a needle mover at the NHL level, I still think he could be an NHL player. Probably as kind of a bottom six, don't hurt us type of forward that maybe chips in here or there. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, especially for a player who's paid his dues and is probably looking to carve out a role for himself at the next level. Yeah. I like I said, I like this move for him. I like this move for the Bruins. Just give them another bet, basically someone who maybe can pan out, especially for a depth goaltender that was sent the other way. And I'm rooting for him because, like I said, a story of increased expectations and hasn't been able to meet them yet. And it's not necessarily by fault of his own. Obviously, he was with Colorado, and that team just won the Stanley Cup last year, so they've been loaded. So Bowers hasn't had necessarily the opportunity to prove himself. But at the same time, he's not letting up in the AHL. So hopefully he takes this new opportunity with the Bruins, runs with it, and gets another NHL opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's easy to root for players like that who've just been dealing with a lot of adversity, trying to break into the NHL. So I'm on the Shane train as well.
The Shane train.
I'll call it the Shane train. All right. Well, thank you guys. That about does it for us this week. Thank you all for tuning into another episode of Prospect Corner. Make sure you subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss the rest of our episodes. And make sure you check out our site, thehockeywriters.com, for tons of 2023 NHL draft coverage over the coming months, really kicking into gear in about a week. Make sure you also check out Hockeypedia on thehockeywriters.com. Thanks again, Devin, for showing up again here. And thank you, Matt. Thank you all for watching this week's edition of Prospect Corner as well. We'll see you all next time.